You're listening to Turn 2 Podcast presented by Nosebleed Knowledge. Now here's your host, Tucker Franklin.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to Turn 2 Podcast, a podcast all about baseball. We're back after a short hiatus. We had a little bit of an all-star break ourselves. I'm here with my boy KB here, Brennan.
How's it going?
We're here to talk about the trade deadline. It's coming right up. It's actually Tuesday, July 31st. We're going to talk about the trades that have already happened as of right now. There's been some big blockbuster trades. Some big names have been moved around. I wouldn't be surprised if there are more big blockbuster trades before the deadline gets over, and probably after this episode airs, and we may have to hop on here and talk about them, but we'll for sure cover them on Nosebleed Radio if we don't talk about it here. First move we're going to talk about is, well, just the Orioles in general. As a team, they're making a lot of moves, they're really keeping the fire sale going, adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah, they needed to do this. They're a bad baseball team at this point. The Orioles and the Royals have both fallen from the graces of their 2015 seasons, respectively. And so this was necessary. They've got Machado, who they got 5 prospects from the Dodgers for a 2-month rental, which is amazing if you're the Orioles. And Zach Britton, who if you don't have the lead going into the end of a lot of ball games, you don't really need an all-star closer.
Right.
So get rid of Zach Britton, get 3 more prospects from the New York Yankees, and then they dealt Brad Brock to the Braves for some international signing money. So really, they've gotten, since they started dealing their guys, and they still have guys that they can trade, like Mark Trumbo, Adam Jones, players like that. Really, they've gotten 8 prospects so far, which is fantastic for only moving 3 players.
What really sucks about the Orioles is they're in a position where if they can't really move Chris Davis because he's just so bad, and they have him on that monster deal when he had that one breakout year. So they're kind of stuck with Chris Davis. He hit a home run the other night that probably should have been robbed, but he just has had a tough time going this year.
Yeah, they've definitely been shafted by that contract they gave them. But we've seen a lot of contracts come back to bite people in the butt. Like the Tigers are currently under the thumb of a pretty bad contract or it looks bad right now, but a pretty not friendly contract with Miguel Cabrera.
Right. Yeah, and I think that we focused on this Orioles side of the trade a lot, but I think the Dodgers, they really fill a gap that they needed to fill with, was it Seager going down? I always get him and Bellinger confused. I think Bellinger hit today, so it was probably Seager.
Yeah, Seager went down. If I'm a Dodgers fan, I like this move, but I'm not sure. Like, giving up 5 prospects, I mean, Dodgers are now the clear favorite in the National League to go to the World Series. There's not a doubt in my mind they can add another starter or another reliever to help Kenley Jansen in the back end of that bullpen. But if I'm other teams looking at it for the free agency coming up, like, the Dodgers traded for Machado, it might not be a rental. I'm not sure how many players get traded as rentals. It'd be an interesting stat to look up. How many of these players that get traded as rentals, these all-star quality players, end up re-signing with the team they got traded to, you know?
Yeah, no. Because I know when the Royals had that run, they were a part of the whole signing rentals. They got Johnny Cueto, Ben Zobrist. Neither of them re-signed. I think maybe the Dodgers felt that they had a chance, at least, to get Manny Machado to resign. That's why they gave up so much. You'd have to think.
But then you also have to look at it like they signed Manny Machado to fill the spot of Corey Seager. But Corey Seager will come back next year. Mm-hmm. So then you'll be in a situation of too many cooks, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which obviously Corey Seager would be the one to go, since Manny Machado was a perennial all-star and one of the best young players in the game. But Corey Seager has also been, I think he's also been an all-star a couple times and he's also one of the best young players in the game. So it's kind of a catch-22. Can't go wrong either way.
Right, and I believe you called it when we did one of our first podcasts. You said that the Dodgers at that time were bottom dwellers. They had nothing going right for them. The Seager just got hurt and was out for the season. Now they're a half game up on the Diamondbacks for the first place in the National League West. And do you think that they'll be able to close that out?
Looking at the standings, Dodgers half game up on the Diamondbacks, whole game up on the Rockies. Diamondbacks have also improved a good amount. They got Eduardo Escobar from the Twins, and he's a really solid player.
Yeah,
so I'd watch out for them. But let's look at the Dodgers' next several games coming up.
I believe they have Milwaukee.
They've got Brewers, and then Dodgers have kind of a rough patch coming up. They've got the Brewers for 4 coming up, and then they've got the Astros for 3, then the red hot Oakland A's for 2, and then division games against the Rockies. So this could be some really telling times for the Dodgers. I think they'll probably have to make at least one other move for some back-end bullpen help, or at least some pitching. But, I mean, you look at this team, Matt Kemp has drank from the fountain of youth. Justin Turner's a stud. Max Muncy is playing like nobody's ever seen him play before. Cody Bellinger still has that potential but he's in a little bit of a sophomore slump, but he still has that rookie year potential. I mean, it's hard to bet against this team.
Right, especially since they've been down there, they've been in the lows, and they've came all the way back. It's pretty impressive what they're doing, especially. You sent me a tweet today about how Kershaw's, by ERA, is having his worst season that he's ever had, and he has a 2.52, I believe, ERA.
Exactly. It's crazy to think that we're like, is Kershaw really that good right now? But yeah, he's having an outstanding season. But it's still his worst season by far.
Right. I think that just shows how good of a pitcher he is. You touched on the Diamondbacks getting Eduardo Escobar. I think that's a really good move for them to solidify the middle infield. The Brewers are really looking for somebody to go to solidify their middle infield because they're really needing like a second baseman type. I know the Brewers looked at Whit Merrifield, but the Royals are standing firm that they don't want to deal him. In my opinion, that's wrong, but we'll talk about that later. And I think that the trade for Moose, I think, is good because it moves Travis Shaw up to second base, and it really adds more power to that Brewers lineup. Like they needed any more with already Aguilar, Travis Shaw, Ryan Braun. They got all these guys that can absolutely rake. Christian Yelich can hit a couple bombs if he wants to. But Eduardo Escobar is one of those moves that kind of flies under the radar, I feel like, because he's not really a big-name guy, but he's a really solid ball player.
Yeah, I watched him play a series against the Cardinals, and he tore them up. He's one of those unsung heroes that has been really helping the Twins. The Twins were a team that had a lot of high hopes going into this season, and unfortunately has fallen into that kind of AL Central kind of muck right now that a lot of teams are in, where they aren't great. So I like the move for the Diamondbacks. It gives them a little help because he's a really good hitter. It'll help with Pollock and Goldschmidt, and I'm blanking on names right now. Lamb. It'll help them really out in their lineup and, like you said, solidify their middle infield. One thing interesting about, because I thought, all the rumors that the Brewers were looking at Merrifield, but they ended up getting Moose, which is understandable. They're moving Travis Shaw to second base. Travis Shaw's never played a day of second base in his life. So that's like, it just confuses me as to why you don't maybe offer a little bit more for Whit,
Right.
For a guy who's a pretty solid second baseman, and he'd be even better. But the Royals are moving him around, so he can't really get any contingency anywhere. I just don't understand. I get it. Moose is a solid hitter. Hasn't been having the season that he's had in years past, but that might be from the lack of protection in the Royals lineup. But I don't think this is the right move for the Brewers.
The Brewers were kind of running out of options. We kind of talked about middle infield already, and one of the big moves was Asdrubal Cabrera going from the Mets to the Phillies staying in the same division. And once those two guys moved, the Brewers were kind of stuck. They didn't really have any other middle infield options. I know you touched on Whit Merrifield. The Royals probably should have moved him. He's the best production on the Royals lineup right now, which isn't a very good lineup. You have your shortstop, well, right now third baseman Alcides Escobar hitting a buck 99, which you don't want anybody on your team hitting below 200. Really, that's not your big league ball players. You should be able to put the ball in play. But I think they should move him. I think Whit Merrifield will be moved? I don't, because Dayton Moore and Ned Yost were both standing pretty firm on not wanting to move him.
So the interesting thing about the Royals not trading Whit Merrifield, he's 29. But he hasn't entered his he hasn't played long enough in the major leagues. Like, I think last year was maybe his first full year in the majors. So a team would still have control over him through arbitration and stuff like that. He wouldn't be a free agent until after the 2022 season. So that's probably why he was the hottest commodity, two-hit Whit, solid defensive player, solid offensive player, plus he got 5 years of control over him. I get why Dayton Moore didn't move him, but I don't think he'll be a Royal through 2022. I still think they should move him, but I don't think Dayton Moore will blatantly lie to the fans.
No, I agree with you. It's just rough to see a guy who potentially could have been an all-star this year. Really, you could categorize him as an all-star snub. I know a lot of people around Kansas City were almost upset Salvi got chosen instead of Whit, but because Whit kind of had the numbers to deserve it. Salvi was just, the name from the Royals, the name recognition, like, oh yeah, that guy's a Royals player. So that's how he got in. But and I think that he could draw some prospects. I really do. But like you said, the contract is a big thing. Money talks, especially with a guy like Whit Merrifield, and they control him for a long time. And he's playing well under kind of a measly contract.
Yeah. It looks like for right now, he's playing 1 year for $569,000. So, in terms of the base, he's producing well enough where he could easily earn $2, $3, $4 million. But he's playing for a fraction of that. It's a tough situation. It's you got to pick a player to rebuild around. Yeah, it looks like the Royals are picking Whit and Salvi to help spearhead this rebuild process.
You have to think they're going to pick Salvi because they have him locked under like an 8-year deal or something like that. I think I saw it was 5 years, actually. 5 years, $80 million, I think is what the contract is. It's just off the top of my head. I might be wrong, but you can fact check me.
They'll pull a Michigan and sign him to a lifetime contract like they tried to do with Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, little Jim
and when
Harbaugh.
He just wants to retire, he'll just go into like a coaching position.
He'll just be like a film coach.
Yeah.
That's what Salvi will be. Salvi would love to just be like a hitting coach or something like that.
Or just baseball organizations are notorious for just making up a title and a salary for somebody, so they could just put Royals player in charge of Hy-Vee Productions or something like that. Whatever Salvi's biggest sponsor is.
Price Chopper.
Yeah. That's right.
Price Chopper he's a quality control Price Chopper guy. We'll try to steer back onto the baseball path here. Yankees and Red Sox both made moves for starting pitchers. Is it J.A. Happ or is it just J. Happ?
I thought it was J.A. Happ, but everybody that I've heard
calls him J.
On the old ESPN, they say J-Happ. I was always under the impression it was J-A-Happ.
So was I. And they played him today, and they kept saying J-Happ, and then they said J-A a little bit, and I was like, I don't know what to call this guy. I always thought it was J-A-Happ, and they get him to solidify the Yankees starting rotation, which this Yankees team is starting to look good. With the Judge injury, it's obviously not looking good if you have one of your best players go down, but I don't know if they can win the AL East. The Red Sox are just on a tear right now. They got Eovaldi from the Rays. I know that the Rays are still looking to deal Chris Price, so that could be something to watch. Yes, I combined David Price and Chris Archer in my head. Chris Archer.
To the best of us.
Yeah. Do you remember when David Price played there? He was a stud.
the Rays haven't been a real great team since the 2009 season. I mean, they've been on the border playoff contention, but they always seem to have that one starting pitcher that is like a contender for the Cy Young, just a stud, and that everybody wants. But they'll talk about trading him at the deadline for 3-4 years in a row, and then they won't, and then all of a sudden, like that fourth or fifth year that they talk about trading him, like, oh my gosh, he's gone. Like, oh, they actually did it this time.
Right, and I think it's absolutely crazy how many good pitchers they've had there. You think they've had, obviously, Chris Archer, David Price, James Shields, Wade Davis came from there, who was a starting pitcher when the Royals got him, and they turned him into a reliever. But they've produced in their minor league system some pretty good pitchers.
Plus, they have Honeywell and Blake Snell right now.
Oh, yeah.
They've got Alex Cobb. He's a stud. So they've got one thing that the Rays have been doing right is pitching. One thing they haven't been doing right is really
Winning.
anything else.
Yeah, winning baseball games. That seems to be a struggle with them. But they play in that hard AL East. Like we said, it's kind of weird to see some of these trades within the division, like the Mets trading to the Phillies and the Red Sox getting from the Rays. It's kind of odd to see because you know they're going to play at least a few more times. You know.
Yeah, we thought. I remember Toby, one of our buds from the Nosebleed Knowledge or Nosebleed Radio crew. He's a Rays fan, and he was, after they released Morrison, traded Cody Dickerson, traded Odorizzi to the Twins. He was like, well, this will be a bad baseball team, but they're sitting at 500 in third place in the AL East. They're probably contending for a wild card spot. This team isn't great, and they're talking about rebuilding, but this is a 500 ball club.
Yeah, they're sitting right now 9.5 games back from the wild card.
It's crazy to think this is a 500 ball club. They are currently, if they're in the AL Central, they'd be 4 games back, but in the AL East, they are 20.5.
That's not good. You don't strive for that at the beginning of the season. It's just things like that are so ridiculous about baseball. As you can have one division that's really good and so hard to win, so tightly contested, kind of like the NL East is just really good, really tightly contested. You can have a one-horse race like the AL Central where everyone's bad and the Indians are good, or you can have a two-horse race really like it is in New York the AL East where it's New York and Boston and. You know, just the different levels of, I don't want to say talent, but of difficulty that they have in each division.
It's just weird to see how these divisions shape up from year to year. Because I remember 3-4 years ago, the NL West was the worst division in baseball, and that was just a fact. Like everybody was like, "Yeah, the NL West is garbage." But now, like you said, the top 4 teams are within 6.5 games of each other. The top 3 are the Rockies are 1 game back of the Diamondbacks and the 1 game back of the Dodgers, and the Diamondbacks are a half a game back of the Dodgers. Whereas in the AL Central, the second place team is 9 games back. The Yankees are 5.5 games back of the Red Sox. So, and these are all teams that made moves. I know the Indians got Brad Hand and Martin Maldonado. The Red Sox got Eovaldi. And the Yankees got Britton. They picked up Luke Voit from the Cardinals. Luke Voit was one of my favorites, so hopefully he'll get more playing time with the Yanks. So these are just ball clubs that are just getting better. The rich get richer kind of thing.
Yeah, that happens always at trade deadline time. You usually see, I think trade deadline has gone from the point where you see teams kind of get another guy to help their run at the playoffs to teams that are already Sherlocks for the playoffs kind of solidify their roster. I think you've seen that switch in the last couple of years.
Yeah, teams that are surely going to make the playoffs be like, all right, now we're going to make the World Series. So, oh well.
Let's see what trades we haven't hit on. Cubs got Cole Hamels from the Rangers. That's a kind of a big move. That happened before the Brewers got Moose, and you know that the Brewers needed to make a move to kind of counteract that, so they could get in with keep in that race really with the Cubs.
It'll be interesting. The Cubs' Achilles heel this year, no matter how good they've been, their Achilles heel has been their starting pitching. So the fact that they go out and get Cole Hamels, on just looking at names, that's an upgrade. But Cole Hamels right now is 5-9 with an almost 5 ERA. So maybe the last time he pitched at Wrigley Field, he threw a no-hitter. So maybe they're banking on that. But this isn't the Cole Hamels of yesteryear that you're getting. This is the new Cole Hamels. His win-loss percentage is, I mean, you can't put a whole lot in the win-loss, I guess, but
right.
The fact that his ERA has ballooned to almost 5, we'll see how he fares. The NL has been probably definitely the weaker of the two leagues, so maybe that'll help, especially with a couple or several weak offenses in that division. But I don't know. I don't think he'll be the Cole Hamels that a lot of Cubs fans were expect him to be.
No, I'm with you on that. It's an interesting move, especially because they try to pad their rotation because of how good of an offense that Milwaukee has, especially adding Moustakas, like I said earlier, really boosts the power in that lineup. They got guys that can really rake, and that lineup just gets rich. Like you said earlier, Rich gets richer. That's kind of like their offense is just getting stacked. They added Joakim Soria as well from Chicago, the Cubs. There's been a slew of relievers on the move as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the Royals proved it. The next year, the Indians and the Cubs proved it. The bullpen is vital to winning the World Series. So the Cardinals, I know as a Cardinals fan, I've watched them over the past 2 days just tear down their bullpen, call up all their top pitching prospects, and be like, all right, we're starting from scratch, trying to get something that works. The Yankees acquired Britton, so now games got a whole lot shorter in New York. The Red Sox have a pretty solid bullpen. It's just people want that strong bullpen. The Brewers, their bullpen was already really good with Barnes and Hader at the back end of it, and they got Soria, the old Mexicutioner.
Oh yeah, he was so good about 5 to 6 years ago. That's longer than that. It's been about 8, hadn't it? 8 to 10.
Yeah, he was good. He was really good until he was like, guys, I don't like the nickname Mexicutioner, and then people are like, oh well, you're not good at pitching anymore.
Right. You have anything else to add to this trade deadline? It's been a good one so far.
Mariners get more bullpen help with picking up Tuivailala from the Cardinals. The Rockies get one of my favorites, Seung-Hwan Oh. He is a pitcher I think he's from Korea, but he has 2 of the best nicknames in baseball, which are Stone Buddha and the Final Boss. So I'm a big fan of that move. We'll see how that helps the Rockies catch up with the Dodgers.
It'll be interesting to see. I told you before the show started, I think it's about time to start scoreboard watching. We'll give an update of the standings here. Right now in the American League, if playoffs were to start today, you'd have Boston clinching the East, Cleveland clinching the Central, and Houston in the West, with 2 wildcard teams being the Yankees and the Mariners.
Yeah, that's what I think the playoffs will end up being.
Yeah, I don't think you'll get too many surprises here in the American League. It's been fairly cut and dry in the American League, but Oakland's only 2 games back of the second wild card spot. Really, who doesn't win the American League East will be that second or the first wild card, and I think that's pretty much it for that. In the National League, yeah, Philadelphia going to clinch the East as playoffs start today. The Cubs in the Central, Dodgers in the West. this wild card is a little bit more up in the air. You have Milwaukee up a game and a half on the first spot, and Arizona right now up a half game, with Colorado and Atlanta hot on the tail of the Diamondbacks.
I think the Cubs, Brewers, Dodgers, and Phillies will make it. I think the Braves will sneak into that second spot. I'm a believer in this Braves team. I don't know why, but something about them, I believe in it.
I do too. I've always really liked the Braves. I don't know why. It's just one of those teams that I've liked this always from the beginning. Kind of like the Red Sox, just a team I've always liked. But I think the Braves had a good pitching performance from. No, shoot, I forgot his name. Newcomb. Yep, had a good pitching performance from Newcomb. Took a no-no into the ninth inning with 2 outs. I really thought I was about to watch it. It was on TBS, so I was watching that game, and old buddy got a little dribbler, a little senile ground ball, broke up the no-no.
And then you see it. They found offensive tweets he had.
Yeah, it's like this guy's day's not already not ruined enough. Let's go ahead and dig up his old tweets and see if he tweeted anything offensive when he was in high school.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, it's tough, you know. I realize these guys are kids, but Newcomb tweeted this when he was a senior in high school, and as a senior in high school, I mean, I'm sure we both did stupid stuff. We're not too far removed from being seniors in high school, but you know, I think I was smart enough to know that like that's just not stuff you tweet.
Right. Yeah, that the same thing goes with Josh Hader. That's happened between the time we've talked. Josh Hader's tweets were almost they were offensive to me, you know, and I'm not easily offended. So we talked about a little bit of that on Nosebleed Radio, but it's just you just think that these guys would have a little bit of common sense, just either not to tweet it or to delete it before they go big, especially with all this happening now, you know.
Yeah, my friends in high school, the only thing they tweeted were like really sad lyrics that like made me question like what they were really feeling. Like I'm like, oh crap, he tweeted this really sad line from a Post Malone song or a U2 song. Maybe I should like, you okay, buddy? Like, but nothing like hard R's or gay slurs, you know.
Yeah. We'll go ahead and we'll move on to this is what Kieran likes to call it, prospect people to watch out for or something like that. And I think that name's going to catch on. We're going to keep that title of prospect people to watch out for or something like that. So this week, Vlad Guerrero Jr. His dad just got inducted into the Hall of Fame today on Sunday.
That's a big move.
Has been activated off the DL and will join AAA Buffalo on Tuesday, July 31st. Trade deadline time, he's going to be joining the Buffalo Bisons.
Unless he gets traded.
Unless he gets traded. That's true, he still could get traded. Maybe the A's want to get more prospects for him.
Maybe.
Or not the A's, the Blue Jays.
I think it'll be interesting to see how he reacts coming off the DL because hadn't faced a lot of adversity before because he had just been tearing it up since day one. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what how he reacts to coming off the DL. You know, the first sign of adversity. I just repeated myself, but I got distracted by a tweet.
What did your tweet say?
It was in our Twitter group chat.
Oh,
Shane sent us.
I got the notification. I didn't look at it. So, KB, you got any series to watch for this week?
Yeah, we got some series to watch. Like Tucker pointed at it's time for some scoreboard watching. So all of these teams are my picks to make the playoffs, plus they happen to be playing each other. So the first one starts tomorrow, or when this comes out. I'm not sure when this will come out. be on July 30th. Milwaukee at the Dodgers. That'll be a 4-gamer, Monday through Thursday. It was interesting when the Dodgers played in Milwaukee. It was right after the Manny Machado trade happened, and people were saying the Brewers had the second best package for Machado, but the Orioles decided to go with the Dodgers option, which is kind of weird to think that Milwaukee's backup plan to Manny Machado was Mike Moustakas. But the Brewers fans booed Machado every time he came up to bat, which is weird to think about, that he was traded and the other team is booing him for a decision that he had no power over. So
yeah, that's sports fans for you.
It'll be interesting to see if the Dodgers fans do anything to the Brewers. They'll probably boo Josh Hader because that seems like the popular thing to do. The next series also starts on Monday the 30th. That is Houston at Seattle, a battle between top two teams in the AL West. That's a 3-gamer, so if Seattle sweeps, they could get within 1 game of the Central lead. But Seattle also has to be careful because they're only 2 games up on the A's. So if they do get swept, they could lose some ground there. And then Friday through Sunday to close out the week, we have a little World Series rematch. That's Astros at Dodgers. This could very well be the World Series again. Both of these teams are outstanding again this year. Clayton Kershaw, we already touched on it, having a great year. Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is kind of a World Series recap and a World Series preview.
Yeah, speaking of that, I was just looking at my predictions I put out. I've been pretty proud of those. How they've unfolded. I believe I published those in February. February 21st of 2018. If the playoffs were to start right now, we already went through who would be in. I had predicted all of them but one correct. The National League is different. I think I had the Rockies in it, which still could happen.
Yeah, they're in striking position, and they've got a series against the Cardinals coming up, and the Cardinals have been bad, so that could be a sweep for them.
And then I had the Twins in the second wild card spot for the American League, which was the only one I got wrong in the American League. And then I had the Nationals winning the East. That's the only things I've gotten wrong. That's 3 wrong things so far. Not too shabby for February.
Overreaction February? Not right now.
Nope, not right now. Got any final thoughts, KB?
Nope. I just hope we might actually, depending on what happens between now and 3 or 4 o'clock on the 31st, we might come out with another quick cast recapping the rest of the moves.
Yeah, I think that if there's a big move, which there's obviously huge potential that there could be another big move with Chris Archer still on the board. I know talks have really heated up about him. That's a big name being on the move. If Whit Merrifield gets traded as well, there's still guys on the board that could still be traded. So I think that there's a good possibility that we may be back again this week.
Man, the trade deadline is my favorite time of year. I love it. I love the moves.
In any sport, too.
Yeah, every sport. And the trade deadline in football, it's always disappointing. Nobody ever gets traded in football. And when they do, it's really confusing. I'll be honest with you.
Baseball trades are the best, though, because, they're kind of confusing for, what do you want to call them, laymen? Like, people who don't really understand baseball as much as we do, not to toot our own horns or anything, but who don't understand the whole prospect and the money, because I know Shane has asked us, because Shane's not a big baseball guy, admittedly. He's asked us about this whole international money and stuff like that. We've had to field questions about this, but then I think that just because there's so many moving parts in a baseball trade, that's why I like it.
I think it makes sense that you don't see a lot of trades in the NFL because if you trade for a guy, when's the deadline? Is it it's on a Wednesday, isn't it?
For the NFL or for
For the NFL, yeah, it's always on in like the middle of the week. If you trade a guy at the deadline, then there's no possible way he could play in your game on Sunday because he doesn't know any of the plays in the playbook. You know?
Right. Yeah, that's true. And in baseball, you don't really have a playbook. You just go out and play baseball.
Yeah, like Machado got traded the All-Star game, first day back from the All-Star game. He was starting shortstop for the Dodgers because they're like, I mean, it's still the same game. We don't have anything. I mean, they probably like taught him the signs, but
yeah, defensive alignment, stuff like that.
Probably 30 minutes. So
yeah, not very long. It's a wonderful time of the year. I know minor league baseball is starting to wind down a little bit. Baseball is starting to hit that off-season stretch, getting down close to the wire. Then we're having fall come up with football, and this is starting to be October's my favorite month because of just all the sports that are going on. You have playoff baseball, college football, NFL, hockey starts up. It's just a wonderful time. We're getting into that, and I'm excited.
I love it. I'm excited for football. I'm excited for hockey. Not really excited for baseball right now. Cardinals are making me sad, but I still love it.
Maybe we'll turn this into a hockey podcast when baseball goes away.
Yeah, let's just turn it into a hockey podcast. We'll go from turn 2 to change shifts or something like that.
Ooh, I think you're onto something. We'll workshop it. I think that'll do it for this week's episode of Nosebleed Radio. Not Nosebleed Radio. I think that'll do it for this week's episode of Turn 2 Podcast. Stay tuned. We may have another episode coming up shortly because of the trade deadline. You never know what's going to happen, so keep your eyes and ears out. We'll probably be tweeting on the Twitter, making sure you're staying up to date on what we have going on here at Nosebleed Knowledge. For my boy, KB, Kieran Brennan, I'm Tucker Franklin. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the flip.